For most of her life, Sheriff Naomi Carter had everything under control. At 38, she wasn't just the youngest sheriff in Georgia's Peach County. She was also the most respected. With her crisp uniform, sharp eyes, and no-nonsense demeanor, Naomi had worked her way up the ranks through grit and sheer willpower. Her officers admired her. The town trusted her. She kept her past locked behind a steel door and threw away the key. Her home life, at least on the surface, was stable. Darren Carter, her husband of 12 years, was a structural engineer with a soft smile and quiet charm. The couple had no children, something Naomi blamed on the job's intensity and Darren's past infidelities, one of which had nearly destroyed their marriage 5 years ago. But she forgave him. At least that's what she told herself. To the outside world, they were a power couple, a symbol of second chances and steady recovery. Then there was Gloria Mitchell, Naomi's mother, a retired high school teacher with silver hair and a warm, commanding voice. After suffering a mild stroke last spring, Gloria had moved in with the couple temporarily, or so they thought. Months passed, then holidays, then a quiet understanding. She wasn't leaving. Naomi didn't mind. She owed her mother everything. Gloria had raised her alone after Naomi's father died in a mysterious car accident when she was 9. They had survived together, just the two of them. A mother's love, Naomi believed, was unshakable. But lately, something fell off. Naomi began noticing little things. It started small, and Naomi almost gaslit herself into ignoring it. A hairbrush out of place in the master bathroom. Lipstick smudged on Darren's coffee mug, a shade Naomi never wore. Gloria's perfume lingering faintly on Darren's office chair. One evening, after a late shift at the station, Naomi had come home to find a living room dark, except for the glow of the television. Gloria emerged from the hallway, startled. "I was just bringing Darren some tea," she said too quickly, holding a cup with trembling fingers. "He's got a headache." Naomi had nodded, tired, drained, unwilling to confront shadows without proof. But the tea smelled like chamomile. Darren hated chamomile. Another time, she found a long silver hair on Darren's pillow. It wasn't hers. When she asked him about it, he chuckled nervously. "Your mom has been napping in here sometimes while you're at work. Says the guest bed hurts her back." Naomi didn't push further. But the next day, she left a small folded towel tucked under the bed covers, almost like a trap. When she came home from work, it had been moved. The towel was on the floor. Then came the whispers, low voices in the kitchen, quickly cut off when she entered. Gloria saying things like, "She's been so tense lately," or "Just give her space, she'll come around." Naomi started sleeping lighter, checking locks more than once, watching her own house like it was part of a crime scene. She even considered setting up hidden cameras, but stopped herself. That would make it real. That would mean admitting she didn't trust the two people closest to her. She told herself she was overreacting, that she was projecting stress from work, the home invasion case, the toddler left alone for hours, the press breathing down her neck. But the lie unraveled a little more each day, until there was nothing left to deny. A shirt of Darren's folded in Gloria's laundry basket. 2 wine glasses in the kitchen sink when she'd been working late. Muted whispers behind closed doors. Once, she caught Gloria brushing Darren's shoulder in a way that didn't feel maternal. It lingered just a moment too long. She shook it off. She was exhausted. The job had been brutal lately, a series of home invasions, one involving a child. Her sleep was shallow, her stress high. She didn't want to seem paranoid or bitter. After all, she'd already forgiven Darren once. If she accused him again without proof, what would that make her? But that unease, it lingered. Then came a Thursday that changed everything. Naomi was supposed to be at the Regional Law Enforcement Summit in Atlanta, a 2-day event with panels, networking, and enough bureaucracy to make anyone's head spin. But the keynote speaker fell ill, and the event was cut short. Naomi didn't tell anyone she was heading back early. Not Darren, not Gloria, not even her assistant. She arrived home just before 4 p.m. The sun was still out. The air was heavy with humidity. Her cruiser rolled up the driveway like a silent witness. She left her boots in the garage, not wanting to track mud in the house. The front door creaked as she opened it quietly. It was too quiet. She walked past the foyer and into the hallway, and that's when she heard it. Not words, just sounds. Low, rhythmic, wet. The bedroom door was open a crack. Naomi stopped breathing. She pushed it slightly, and what she saw shattered every thread of logic in her mind. Her husband, Darren, was on his knees, between the thighs of her mother. Gloria sat half-naked on the edge of the bed, moaning softly, eyes closed, hands gripping Darren's head. Naomi didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't blink. She slowly pulled out her phone and hit record. Her fingers trembled. Her breath caught. Her heart felt like it was punching through her ribs, begging to escape. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She recorded 30 seconds, then backed away, step by step, her boots still in the garage, her keys in her pocket, her marriage in ruins, her marriage in ruins, her soul shattered. As Naomi sat behind the wheel, unable to start the engine, a memory forced its way through the fog in her mind. She was 9 years old again, standing in the school hallway, her backpack torn, her lip bleeding. A girl named Amanda had shoved her into a locker because Naomi had won the spelling bee. The principal hadn't done anything. Naomi had cried all the way home. But then Gloria showed up at the school, still in her work clothes, a fury in her eyes that Naomi had only seen once before when a dog attacked their neighbor's kid. Which one? Gloria had asked, kneeling in front of her daughter, wiping the blood from her lip. Naomi pointed. Gloria marched straight into the classroom, pulled Amanda aside, and in front of the teacher said calmly, "If you ever touch my daughter again, I'll teach her to fight back so hard your grandchildren will feel it." Naomi hadn't forgotten the stunned silence in the room, or the way Gloria held her hand as they walked home, or the words she said that night over a plate of reheated spaghetti. Never let anyone make you feel smaller than you are. Not a boy, not a bully, not anyone. That was the Gloria she knew, the Gloria she loved, the mother who sat with her every night, helping with homework, teaching her to iron her uniform just right, reminding her that being a black girl in Georgia meant she had to be twice as sharp, twice as good, and never, never let her guard down. Back then, Naomi had once asked about her father, Daniel Carter. Gloria's face had gone still. "He died in a car accident," she said quietly. "We don't talk about it. It's too hard." And that had been that. Naomi had accepted it, never pushed, never questioned why there were no pictures. No funeral she could remember. No memories of him at all. Now, in the driver's seat, phone still clutched in hand, Naomi felt her stomach twist. Had it all been a lie? Was that strong, fierce, loyal woman just another mask? Or was she still that woman, just deeply broken in ways Naomi never saw? She didn't know, and that terrified her more than anything. Outside, she got into her car and drove. Not to the station, not to her friend Rachel's. She drove to nowhere. Because how do you react when the two people you trusted most in the world betray you? Together? And worse, why did it feel like this betrayal wasn't new? Naomi didn't go home that night. She didn't even call anyone. She drove for hours, ending up in an empty parking lot behind an old Baptist church on the edge of town. The windows were fogged from her breath. The summer heat pressed against the windshield like a curse. Her phone buzzed with calls she ignored. Darren, Gloria, Darren again. No voicemails, just silence and ringing. She stared at the 30-second video on her phone. Watched it once, twice, then a third time. And then she cried, not the kind of crying that comes with sound or drama, but the kind that drowns a person from the inside out. The kind where tears roll down your face without permission, where your chest tightens like you're being buried alive. How could they? How could her mother, the woman who taught her to walk, to stand her ground, to never let a man define her, become the ultimate betrayal? And Darren, God, Darren, after all the chances, all the forgiveness, she had stood by him when the whole town called him a cheat. She had defended him to her deputies, to her pastor, to herself. Now this? Naomi checked into a motel on Route 14 under a fake name. Just one night, she told herself. Just enough time to figure out what to do. She needed to breathe, to think, to not become the headline of her own nightmare. The next morning, she drove straight to the home of Detective Rachel West, her best friend and the only person she could trust. Rachel opened the door still in pajamas, coffee in hand. "Naomi, what, are you okay?" Naomi didn't speak. She just held up the phone and pressed play. Rachel watched. Her face fell, mouth slightly open. Then came one word: Jesus. They sat in silence for a long time after that. "I need time," Naomi finally whispered. "I need to disappear, just for a few days. If I go home right now, I'll either kill them or myself." Rachel nodded. "Take whatever time you need. I'll cover for you at the station. But Naomi, you need to deal with this. And soon." "I will," Naomi said, but her voice betrayed her. She didn't know what she would do. Back at the Carter house, Darren was panicking. He had called Naomi's phone 47 times in 24 hours. Left a dozen texts. The last one just read, "Please, just come home. I can explain." But he couldn't explain. Not really. There was no defense for what she'd seen. Gloria, meanwhile, said nothing. She went about her day as if nothing had happened, tending her roses, sweeping the porch, pretending her world hadn't just imploded. But there was something different in her eyes. A tightness. A fear. That evening, Darren tried to talk to her. "What are we going to do?" he asked, pacing the kitchen. Gloria didn't look up from her tea. "We wait. Let her cool off. She has a video, Gloria. A goddamn video. Then let her decide what to do with it. She's always been strong. She'll choose correctly." But Darren wasn't so sure. He'd seen something in Naomi's eyes that day. Something he hadn't seen since the night she arrested a child molester and stared him down without blinking. It was the look of someone who had already made up her mind. On the third day, Naomi returned to the station, silent, cold, and professionally composed. She didn't speak to Darren. She didn't speak to Gloria. She just wanted to work like nothing had happened. But behind closed doors, she began planning. And then, the fourth morning came. Darren called 911, voice trembling. "My mother-in-law, she's not breathing. I think she fell. Please, send someone." When officers arrived, Gloria Mitchell was dead, lying in the bathroom, head cracked against the porcelain sink, blood pooling on the tile. Her robe was soaked, her eyes wide open. At first glance, it looked like a tragic fall. But Naomi wasn't so easily convinced. Not after what she'd seen. Not after what she knew. And as she stood over her mother's lifeless body, something inside her clicked. This wasn't just betrayal. This was murder. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her motel bed, staring at the wall, the TV remote untouched in her hand. Outside, rain drizzled against the window, soft and steady, the kind of rain that felt personal. She was about to turn off her phone when it rang. Unknown caller. Her heart jumped. She answered. "Hello." Silence. Then a man's voice, low and cracked with age, rasped through the line. "She should have told you the truth." Naomi's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" But the line had already gone dead. She stared at the screen. Tried redialing. The number was blocked. Nothing in recent call logs. She even called Rachel, half embarrassed, asking if the station had any tools to trace blocked numbers without a subpoena. Rachel was quiet on the other end. What did they say? Naomi repeated the words. She should have told you the truth. Rachel exhaled. You think it's about the affair? Naomi shook her head, though no one could see her. No, this didn't sound like Darren. It didn't sound like anyone I know. Then it sounds like something or someone from her past. Naomi clutched the phone tighter. That one sentence stuck in her mind like a splinter. She should have told you the truth. But what truth? What else was Gloria hiding? The thought festered all night. By morning, Naomi had made a decision. She would stop treating this like a family crisis. It was a case now, and she was going to solve it. The moment Naomi stepped into the bathroom, she knew something was off, not just as a daughter, but as a sheriff. Gloria's body lay awkwardly, her head resting in an unnatural angle beside the sink. A crimson halo bloomed beneath her skull. The floor was wet, but only partially. The rest of the bathroom was bone dry. No overflowing tub, no running faucet, just a few droplets like someone had splashed water after the fact. Detectives from the county team were already on site when Naomi arrived, though she hadn't been called officially. She showed up in plain clothes, no badge, no uniform, just instincts. Sheriff, Deputy Rogers greeted awkwardly. Didn't expect you here. Naomi ignored him. Her eyes scanned the scene. Gloria's robe was slightly torn at the shoulder. Her fingers had crescent-shaped bruises, defensive wounds. And on the porcelain edge of the sink, Naomi spotted a faint smear. Blood, but curved, as if left by the base of a palm. She turned to the responding officer. You think this was an accident? The young officer swallowed. Darren said he heard a loud thud. Came in, found her like this. No pulse. No broken tiles. No spilled shampoo. Nothing that would have made her slip. She was old. She was 60, not 90. Naomi's tone snapped sharper than intended. She crouched down. There on the floor, just inches from her mother's hand, a long, thin strand of synthetic hair. Blonde. Gloria wore silver. And Naomi? She had worn a blonde wig undercover 2 nights ago for a sting. Her stomach turned. She stood up fast. Back in the living room, Darren sat on the couch, hands trembling, shirt half untucked. His voice cracked as he repeated the same story. I heard a crash. I ran in. She was already gone. Did she say anything before? The officer asked. No, nothing. We had breakfast. She said she felt dizzy. That's all. Naomi didn't step in. She stood in the hallway, listening, observing. Darren's hands were shaking, but not from grief. More like fear, of being caught, or something else. Naomi's phone buzzed. Detective Rachel West. I've just got word. Gloria's body's being transferred to forensics. Want me to push for a full tox and trauma panel? Absolutely, Naomi said, her voice low. Also check her fingernails. If she fought back, she might have taken something with her. You're thinking homicide? I'm thinking this wasn't a slip. The autopsy came back 2 days later. Cause of death: blunt force trauma to the occipital bone, the back of the skull. Angle of impact: from above at close range. No skull fractures consistent with a fall. Conclusion: not an accident. And that's when the rumors started. Sheriff's mother found dead days after scandal. Infidelity, betrayal, and now bloodshed. Was it revenge? The town buzzed like flies over a carcass. And Naomi? She was drowning. She hadn't just lost her mother. She'd lost control of the narrative. People whispered behind her back. Deputies hesitated before saluting. Even the mayor called to ask if she wanted to take some personal leave. And worst of all, she was now officially a person of interest. Rachel met her in private that evening. They found partial prints on the sink, she said quietly. Naomi nodded. Mine. You touched the body? I adjusted her head. Reflex. Rachel exhaled. I want to believe you. God, I do. But you were angry. You disappeared for 3 days. You had motive. I didn't kill my mother, but someone did. Naomi's hands clenched. And if it wasn't me, she said coldly, then I swear to God, I'm going to find out who it was. Rachel leaned forward. Then you need to think like a suspect, not a sheriff. That's the only way you're going to survive this. Naomi went home that night for the first time since everything broke. The house felt haunted. Gloria's room still smelled like lavender. The hallway light flickered, and Darren was in the kitchen, drinking whiskey straight from the bottle. He didn't say anything when Naomi walked in, just looked at her, with bloodshot eyes and lips that trembled like a guilty man's. She wanted to ask if he did it. She wanted to scream, cry, hit him, but all she said was, "You're sleeping in the guest room." Then she locked her bedroom door and cried herself to sleep. The next morning, she woke up with a thought she couldn't shake. If I didn't kill her, and Darren didn't kill her, then who the hell did? The house was colder now, not just in temperature, but in spirit. Gloria's perfume still lingered in the hallway, soft and haunting. Her teacup remained on the windowsill by the kitchen, a folded crossword on the armrest of the recliner. Naomi didn't move any of it. She couldn't. Touching anything felt like betrayal, or worse, an admission that her mother was really gone. She hadn't cried since the funeral, not even once. Instead, she worked. She combed through every report, rewatched every minute of the crime scene footage, and stayed up all night mapping possible entry points in the house. But none of it added up. The security system hadn't been tripped. The windows were locked. The back door had been deadbolt. Whoever killed Gloria had been inside. But Naomi wasn't ready to point the finger at Darren. Not yet. Something about his behavior didn't scream killer. Coward? Absolutely. Cheater? Repeatedly. But murderer? That wasn't his kind of sin. So she went looking somewhere else, into the past. Before she found the box, Naomi sat on the floor of her mother's bedroom. Now a hollow, echoing space that smelled faintly of lavender and powder. She picked up a scarf still draped on the bedpost, folded it slowly, mechanically. Her fingers brushed against the armchair near the window, the one Gloria used to sit in every morning with tea and a crossword. Naomi remembered once teasing her mother about getting old. Gloria had just smiled, that half-knowing smile she always wore when something cut deeper than she let on. Getting old isn't the hard part, she'd said. It's watching the past follow you into it. At the time, Naomi had dismissed it as poetic nonsense. Now it haunted her. There had been one conversation, weeks before everything collapsed, that Naomi kept replaying. They were in the kitchen late at night, sharing a quiet moment over leftover pecan pie. Gloria had seemed distant, eyes unfocused. "You ever wish you could undo something?" she asked suddenly. Naomi blinked. "You mean like a mistake?" "No," Gloria said softly. "Something worse. Something that wasn't a mistake, just a decision you made because you thought it was right until it wasn't." Naomi had stared at her. "What are you trying to tell me?" Gloria shook her head quickly. "Nothing, baby. Just tired thoughts. Ignore me." Now Naomi couldn't ignore it. She opened Gloria's closet, running her hand along the back panel, and saw a slit in the lining, a loose flap of fabric. Inside was a thin envelope marked only. For Naomi, if anything ever happens. Her breath caught. She opened it with trembling fingers. Unsent letter. Gloria writes to Naomi. "My dearest Naomi, if you're reading this, then I've either lost the chance to say it out loud, or I was too much of a coward. There are things I've buried so deep I forgot where I left them. But some truths don't stay buried. Your father, the man I told you died in a car crash, wasn't who you think. His name was Malcolm Green. I met him when I was young and foolish and starved for love. He was charming, too charming. And when I tried to leave, he wouldn't let me. What happened between us wasn't love. It was fear and shame and survival. But I got you out of it. You were the only good thing that came from that darkness. I lied to protect you. I built a life around that lie. I made choices, some I regret, some I'd make again. But the one I regret most is not telling you sooner. I just wanted you to believe you came from love, even if that love had to be made up. I know you're strong. You always have been. But even strong women need the truth. Forgive me, not because I deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Love, Mom. Naomi sat in silence. The room didn't spin. It stilled. Her chest felt hollow, not from rage, not from grief, but from the weight of everything unsaid. She folded the letter carefully and pressed it to her chest. For a moment, she didn't feel like the sheriff. She felt like a daughter again, lost in a story too old and too painful to rewrite. Naomi sat in her mother's bedroom for a long time, the late afternoon light casting pale orange bars across the empty wall where Gloria used to hang family photos. The letters still rested in her hands, the confession, the apology, the love. But something was missing. It felt like a life raft thrown into the middle of a storm, enough to keep her afloat, but not enough to carry her home. She stood slowly, her body heavy with the weight of everything unspoken, and walked to Gloria's vanity. It was the one drawer Naomi was never allowed to open as a child. She opened it now. Inside were old tins of balm, handkerchiefs wrapped in fading tissue, and a small leather-bound journal, its cover cracked with age. She opened it carefully. The first page held a simple inscription. It began when I met him, July 1985. It was a diary. The handwriting was familiar, Gloria's neat, slanted script, but the content wasn't. Naomi's breath slowed as she read. I met Malcolm at the town library. He handed me a book I'd been searching for, one I couldn't find. It was the most romantic thing I'd experienced in years. I was 23, grieving my mother, tired of being alone. I thought, I deserved love. He was kind, too kind, but his eyes always watching, like a hunter pretending to be a poet. The first time he held my hand, I felt cold. Not from the weather, from something inside. My gut said run, but I stayed. Naomi turned the pages slowly, as if handling something sacred and dangerous at the same time. Each entry felt like a warning Gloria once heard but chose to ignore. And suddenly, her mother's protectiveness, the way she'd raised Naomi to be guarded, hard, hyper-independent, all of it began to make sense. One entry had a line scribbled in red ink, clearly added years later. He made me believe I was worthless without him. When I found out I was pregnant, he said, "Now you'll never leave. You're mine forever." I remember throwing up, not from a morning sickness, but from fear. Naomi froze. That child Gloria was writing about. It was her. The next page was almost frantic, the writing jagged. I planned my escape for weeks. Wrote him a goodbye letter. Told him I had a job interview. Then I vanished. Took Naomi and nothing else. No papers, no bags, no past. Just this baby and the promise. She'll never know that kind of darkness. I'll be her shield, her mother, her father, her whole world. Naomi closed the journal. Her hands were trembling, her throat dry. But her chest, oddly, didn't feel as heavy. The pain was still there. The loss, the betrayal. But something had shifted. Now she knew what Gloria had truly survived. She understood why her mother had been so fierce, so guarded, so unwilling to let Naomi be soft. Because Gloria hadn't just been a single mother. She had been a refugee from her own life. Naomi stood by the window, watching the long shadows stretch across the yard, and whispered toward the empty room. "I'm not angry anymore, Mama. I get it now. I really do." It started with a letter, tucked between olden books in a carved wooden box Gloria kept in her closet. Naomi had seen the box before, but never opened it. Her mother had said it was private, and that was enough. But not anymore. Inside were faded photos, a silver locket Naomi had never seen, and one envelope, yellowed with age, addressed only to MG. Burn this. Naomi opened it. The letter inside was short, just a few lines in Gloria's cursive. I don't know what you want from me anymore. You promised to stay away. You promised to leave my daughter out of it. If you ever come near her again, I swear I'll tell the truth, all of it. No date, no signature, but it was Gloria's writing. Naomi's throat tightened. She flipped the envelope. In the corner, barely legible under layers of dust. MG. Who the hell was MG? Rachel ran the initials through old county records. 2 days later, she called Naomi with a hushed voice. Naomi, you need to sit down. Rachel had found an old psychiatric file from 1986. A man named Malcolm Green, committed for a violent episode involving a woman named Gloria Mitchell. Back then, a young teacher in her early 20s. The report was sealed, but Rachel pulled strings. He was obsessed with her, Rachel said. Stalked her for months. Showed up at her house. Broke into her classroom once. Gloria didn't press charges, but the school forced him into psychiatric care. Naomi's heart raced. How long was he in there? 6 years. Then released in 92. Disappeared after that. Changed names. You think he came back? I think he never really left. Naomi traced the address from the hospital's discharge file. It was an old rural property 30 miles outside town. A rundown cabin off a dead-end road surrounded by pine trees. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. Not even Rachel. Just in case. The cabin smelled like mildew and secrets. It was abandoned. Or at least it looked that way. Inside, Naomi found dust-covered books, old newspaper clippings, and on one wall, photographs. Dozens of them. All of Gloria. Some from recent years, taken from a distance like through a long lens. Others were older, decades old. Naomi saw one of herself as a child, holding her mother's hand outside a school building. She felt sick, but then she found the journal. A leather-bound notebook on the table. On the first page, just one name, Gloria. The rest was madness. Pages of rambling thoughts. Phrases repeated over and over. She lied. She said I was nothing, but I was everything. She kept the child. She never told me. I see her eyes in the girl. The same shape. The same fire. Naomi dropped the book like it burned her. She backed away from the table. Her mind raced. She kept the child. Was he talking about her? She drove back home in silence, the wind howling through the crack in her window like a ghost trying to get in. Her hands were shaking so hard she almost missed the turn back to town. When she pulled into the driveway, Darren was sitting on the porch, staring into nothing. He looked up. You okay? Naomi didn't answer. She just walked past him, into the house, into the dark. Because suddenly, the question wasn't just who killed her mother. It was why Gloria had spent her entire life hiding a truth that could destroy them all. Naomi barely slept that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the fan spinning above like an interrogation light, slicing shadows across the room. The journal's words echoed in her mind. She kept the child. I see her eyes in the girl. She wanted to deny it. Call it delusion. But deep down, something in her already knew. Malcolm Green wasn't just a stalker. He was her biological father, and her mother had kept it secret for 38 years. The math fit. The time, the place. Naomi had always thought her father, Daniel Carter, died in a car crash when she was 9. Gloria never talked about him. No photos. No funeral Naomi could remember. Just silence. As a child, she didn't ask questions. As an adult, she respected boundaries. Now she realized that silence wasn't grief. It was shame. The next morning, Rachel showed up at Naomi's doorstep. She held a manila folder, her expression tight. I traced Malcolm's alias through the DMV, she said. He's living 2 towns over under the name Michael Grayson. Owns a small garage. Keeps to himself. Naomi's jaw clenched. We need a warrant. Rachel hesitated. We don't have enough. No prints of the crime scene. No DNA. No direct threat. Just circumstantial paranoia. Naomi's voice dropped. He has a journal filled with obsession. Pictures of my mother. Of me. He killed her, Rachel. I know it. Rachel sighed. I believe you. But if you show up as the sheriff with a personal grudge and no legal cause, you're the one who ends up on trial. Naomi turned away. Then I won't show up as sheriff, she said. I'll show up as a daughter. That evening, Naomi drove alone to the auto garage. It was a squat brick building with flaking paint, tucked between a cornfield and a scrapyard. No sign out front, just a rusted gate and a mailbox marked M. Grayson. She parked and stepped out. The air smelled of oil and heat. Inside, a man hunched over a workbench, tall, wiry, white hair streaked with yellow like nicotine stains. His back was to her. Malcolm, she said. He didn't turn. She took a step closer. Or should I say, that got him. He turned slowly, his eyes dark and hollow, but unmistakably familiar. Naomi saw her own cheekbones in his face. The same sharp jaw, the same cold intensity. You figured it out, he said softly. Naomi's stomach flipped. Why didn't you just stay away? He chuckled. I did. For decades. But then she wrote me. Said she was dying. Said she regretted everything. Asked if I wanted to meet you. He pointed a grease-stained finger at her chest. I told her the only thing I wanted was the truth. And maybe a chance to be a father. She was protecting me, Naomi snapped. She was hiding you, he hissed. She erased me. You were mine too. Naomi stepped back. You weren't supposed to exist. You raped her, Malcolm. He looked hurt, a twisted, childlike hurt. She said she loved me. At first. It wasn't how you think. It doesn't matter how I think. It matters what she lived through. You stole her life. And when she didn't give you what you wanted, Naomi's voice cracked. You killed her. He smiled then. A soft, sick smile. I only wanted to talk, he whispered. She got scared, screamed, tried to call you. I panicked. He mimed a striking motion. I didn't mean to hit her that hard. Naomi's hand went to her holster, empty. She wasn't wearing her badge. No weapon. No backup. Just rage. Later that night, Rachel stormed into Naomi's house. You went there alone? He confessed, Naomi said quietly, staring out the window. You recorded it. Naomi nodded. He didn't know. My phone was in my pocket. Rachel exhaled in relief. That's enough. We've got him. But Naomi didn't look relieved. She looked broken. He's my father, Rachel, she whispered. The man who murdered my mother is the man who gave me life. Rachel didn't speak. There were no words for that kind of pain. Malcolm Green was arrested the next morning. He didn't resist. Didn't ask for a lawyer. He signed the confession and kept repeating. I just wanted to be part of something. The town gasped when the truth came out. Headlines exploded. Podcasts picked it up. The sheriff born from a crime, and the murder that followed. Naomi stepped down from her role quietly. She didn't want applause. Didn't want pity. She just wanted silence. But silence doesn't come easily when your whole life has been built on lies. And as Naomi stood at her mother's grave weeks later, flowers in hand, she whispered, You didn't deserve to die this way, and I didn't deserve to be born into this. But I'll carry it, all of it, because I'm your daughter, even if the world says otherwise. And then she walked away from the grave, the town, and the ghost that refused to let go. The trial didn't last long. With the recorded confession, the journal, the photographs, and the psychiatric history, the prosecution had more than enough to charge Malcolm Green, a.k.a. Michael Grayson, with second-degree murder. He didn't fight it, didn't plead insanity, didn't show remorse. When the judge asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, Malcolm stood, turned to Naomi in the courtroom gallery and simply said, "I just wanted to know my daughter. That's all I ever wanted." Naomi didn't flinch. Her eyes never left his. But deep down, something twisted inside her. A part of her wished he had screamed, denied, raged, anything but that soft, pathetic truth. He was sentenced to 25 years to life with no possibility of parole for the first 15. Naomi left the courtroom before the gavel dropped. She didn't want to hear the words. Naomi walked down the courthouse steps alone, the press still shouting her name behind the police line. Cameras flashed, microphones extended, but she didn't stop. She just kept walking, toward her car, toward nothing. But just as she reached the parking lot, an older woman stepped into her path. Late 60s, maybe older. Worn coat, kind eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. "Sheriff Carter?" the woman asked, her voice raspy. Naomi flinched at the title but nodded. The woman looked down, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. I wanted to say something. I was in that courtroom." Naomi waited. The woman looked up, tears forming. "I knew Malcolm. A long time ago. Back in '84. He worked at a gas station off Route 12. I was 19. He followed me home twice. Once, he tried to force his way into my apartment." Naomi's stomach tightened. "I told the police," the woman continued. "They said he didn't have a record, that I was exaggerating, that I'd probably invited him in." She swallowed hard. "I never said a word after that. I moved cities, changed jobs, kept my head down. But when I saw your story on the news, when I saw what he did to your mother," she paused, voice cracking, "I just wanted you to know your mama wasn't alone, and neither are you." Naomi didn't speak. She just stepped forward and hugged the woman. They stood there for a long moment, two women, bound by pain neither of them had chosen, holding each other like survivors of the same storm. When they parted, the woman squeezed Naomi's hand. "You carry her well," she said, "even when it's heavy." Naomi nodded. It was heavy, but now it felt just a little more bearable. The media storm was relentless. Every article led with her name. Sheriff's mother murdered by her own father. Bastard bloodline. Naomi Carter's shocking family secret. From law to loathing. The rise and fall of Peach County Sheriff. It didn't matter that she was the one who cracked the case. It didn't matter that she risked her life to bring justice. All anyone cared about was the scandal. The headlines. The DNA she never asked for. Naomi officially resigned from the sheriff's department 3 weeks after the trial. The letter was short, professional, and free of emotion. But the press conference afterward was different. She stood at the podium, reporters swarming, cameras flashing, and spoke with the steel voice of a woman who had nothing left to hide. "I was born into violence. I served to fight it. And now, I leave to heal from it. This badge was my life, but it will not be my death." And with that, she placed her badge on the podium and walked away. No applause, no tears, just silence, and the sound of shutters clicking behind her. She moved to Savannah, a smaller city, a quieter rhythm. She rented a 1-bedroom apartment above a used bookstore and started working part-time in community outreach, helping at-risk youth. It wasn't law enforcement, but it was still service. And more importantly, it was anonymous. Most people didn't recognize her. The ones who did pretended not to. That was kindness enough. Every now and then, she'd get letters from former deputies, friends, even strangers who had read about her story and wrote to say they were sorry, or that they admired her. Naomi read every single one, but never replied. And then came the box. It arrived on her doorstep one rainy morning. No return address. Inside, a faded photograph of Gloria holding baby Naomi standing in front of a church. And a note, written in Gloria's familiar cursive. "I never wanted to lie. I just wanted you to grow up believing you came from love. Maybe that was wrong, but you were always my light, My only reason. I'm sorry. Love, Mom. Naomi sat on the floor for hours, clutching the note. No tears, just a quiet ache. The kind that never leaves but eventually softens. 6 months later, she visited the prison. Not for vengeance. Not for answers. Just closure. Malcolm was gaunt now. Older. Eyes sunken but no longer burning. When he saw her, he stood up slowly. "Naomi," he said with a tired smile. "You came." She stared through the glass divider. "I wanted to see for myself," she said. "See what?" "That you're just a man," she said flatly. "Not a shadow. Not a monster. Not some legend I've been cursed to live under." Malcolm nodded. "I'm all of those things. And none of them." Naomi didn't respond. After a long pause, she leaned forward. "I forgive you." Malcolm's eyes filled with tears. "But," she added sharply, "that forgiveness doesn't mean you'll ever have a place in my story again." She stood up. He pressed his hand against the glass, but she didn't touch it. She walked out, head high, steps steady, the ghost behind her at last. The seasons changed. Savannah's fall crept in slow. Red leaves on cobblestone sidewalks. The smell of rain mixed with river breeze. Naomi had begun to smile again, though never fully. Just enough to let the world know she was still here. Her days became routine. Coffee from the corner cafe, mornings at the community center, afternoons helping teenagers fill out job applications or write college essays. Many of them were from broken homes. Some had parents in prison. Some had never known love that wasn't conditional. Naomi never told them her full story, but they listened when she spoke, because there was something in her voice, something quiet and honest, that told them, this woman understands pain, and she survived it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the moss-draped trees, Naomi visited Gloria's grave for the first time since leaving town. She'd had it relocated to a quiet cemetery outside Savannah, away from the cameras, the gawkers, the whispers. Just a small headstone beneath a weeping willow that read, "Gloria Mitchell, mother, teacher, fighter, we carry the light you gave us." Naomi knelt in the soft earth, brushing her fingers across the engraved letters. For a long time, she said nothing. Then, softly, "I'm okay, Mama. Not whole, but okay. You do what you thought was right. I see that now. I see you now as a woman, not just as my mother." A breeze moved through the branches, rustling the leaves like a whisper. Naomi closed her eyes. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She gave it. To Gloria. To herself. Even, quietly, to Darren, who had moved away and remarried in another state. She didn't love him anymore. Didn't hate him either. He was part of a chapter now closed. Months passed. One morning, Naomi opened her mailbox and found an envelope with no name. Only a return address from the Georgia Women's Correctional Center. Inside was a short letter from a girl named Tanya. She was 19, serving a 5-year sentence for assault. The letter read, "I heard about you. I don't know the whole story. Don't care to. But they said you were a sheriff who got back up when the world knocked you down. That gives me hope. Thank you." Naomi folded the letter and placed it in her drawer next to Gloria's final note. Hope. It still existed, even the ruins. And one evening, she stood before a group of women at a support meeting for survivors of family trauma. She didn't wear a uniform, didn't quote laws. She simply stood there and told her truth. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to protect us break us. And sometimes, the people we love the most carry the darkest secrets. But that doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do with the ashes. She paused, then added, her voice low but steady. "I was born into violence, but I chose healing, and I'm still choosing it every day." The room was silent. Then, a single clap, then another. Then every woman in that circle stood, not in applause, but in solidarity. The final scene is quiet. Naomi, barefoot in her apartment, watering her plants. A cup of coffee growing cold on the windowsill. Jazz humming faintly from an old speaker. She picks up a notebook and begins to write. Chapter 1. Not a sheriff's report. Not a statement. Just a truth, hers. And for the first time, it felt like enough. And smiles. Not because everything's okay, but because she finally knows how to begin again.